first business trip, which is surreal and fun and refreshing actually. But yeah.
And do you travel with? Oh, you can't travel with beverage. Well, you can check it in, right? But you can't obviously travel on planes with the beverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think about that. Well, listen, I'm really excited to talk. We obviously connected a little bit yesterday. Had a great, really casual, easy conversation, and I think I was watching the subject matter before, and I think you and I should just continue it, right? But I think it's best, really, obviously, let the audience know. We really want to kind of talk about today and summarize your guys' experience, Recess's brand's experience, kind of talking about the shifts in the kind of consumer behavior, right? That particularly in this relaxation category that's grown over the past year, and that's going to continue to grow. And I think you and I talked about really that conversation of those shifts of that behavior and really some of the marketing challenges and successes, right, that you guys have gone through, and just have a casual conversation and tie into that a bit. So probably best talk a little bit about yourself, right? And and then I'll talk a little bit about myself, and then we'll dig into the conversation.
Cool. Yeah. I'll start with myself, and then we can talk all Recess. I mean, I'm a bit different maybe than most other people in the food and beverage space, where I came from the media and agency side. I worked at Vice for over 8 years. So I come from like a very much a storytelling background, which is actually pretty beneficial when you're moving into like the CPG space, and especially in beverage, and especially when you're explaining, establishing a category is a big story to tell.
Right.
So that's like, been the fun challenge. But at Vice, I also was on the agency side. One of my best and brightest brand partners I love very much still to this day was Anheuser-Busch. So if anyone was watching from there, hello.
I mean, it's a great brand. They do a phenomenal job. So you can't not love it.
Getting to work with Post Malone and then do silly college stuff with Natty Light was always fun, but it was also just an introduction to like, just the CPG world in general. And
restrictions.
And kind of fell in love with it. So that led me to leaving media and joining Recess, because I saw Recess first and foremost as like a very strong brand. And I can talk about why, a bit later after you introduce yourself. But yeah, now I'm at Recess leading brand marketing, leading the charge into the relaxation category.
Great. Well, again, I'm excited to talk and appreciate the time. And I think the audience will be excited. I'll quickly mention myself and then really steer the conversation all about you guys. Sean Horvath. I've been in the advertising business for around 20 years. Before that, was more in the talent management business here in Los Angeles. And over the years, really have focused probably around like 2008, most of my career focused on content and how brands are really using emerging platforms for that content journey. And over the years, it shifts, right? Over the years, it shifted to YouTube, Facebook, shifts back and forth, the newer platforms like TikTok, to where I am now is really being immersed within the gaming world and coming to a place that StreamElements provides the technology for streamers to actually go live on Twitch or YouTube and Facebook. So just like we're going live now, if you were going live, there'd be a graphics package and ways you interact with your audiences. So our cloud-based technology does that. And during COVID, it was interesting, right? We had obviously in the category a growth in people online and more in gaming. So we've had a strong year. But also, like any company, challenges with the growths, right, and challenges within a year of change, right? And it's as you and I talked about yesterday, like the category and people's need for being at home and how they order products and not having to go into a store. And like I joked before about buying it online, to Pearl, but I thought I would never buy drinks online. And I found myself ordering mini cases of Schweppes ginger ale that I love and can't find in the supermarkets, ordering it by 3 cases, and it really actually costing less, So it even my consumer habit. So I guess let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really where we started our conversation yesterday, just from our own point of view a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, beverage is unique, right? Because it's something you grab a lot of throughout the day or just throughout the week. And I guess like taking a step back with Recess and why I joined and why I think D2C is working really well for us, and including subscription, which I can get to, is it was a concise effort to not come out the gate as like a CBD brand. Like, you know, it's like,
We talked about that. Yeah.
yeah, like, you know, we positioned ourselves as, you know, a relaxation brand, you know, calm, cool, collected, in order to fill this more like macro need state that, like, you know, we saw, and a lot of people do see, like, that, like, is forming for consumers, where like they need to just relax and calm down. It's like, you know, you can only push yourself so hard with like energy drinks, like, you know, the like arms race of like canned coffee and cold brew of just getting stronger and stronger. It's like,
I listen. Yeah, we talked about it yesterday. There's, even with gamers, there's this misconception. While half of the gamer audience does drink hard energy drinks, the other half, they're like, no, it gives me a false sense of an energy, and then I crash. And if I'm broadcasting to my audience, I can't do that. So yeah, it's interesting you say that.
yeah.
Go on. I'm sorry.
And these are all great things, and I, you know, I love booze too. But people also, I think, especially after last year, you know, stuck inside, you're looking for a bit like any alternatives to relax that aren't wine or beer or liquor. So uh, that was the strategy, and it worked, and it was well, because now we're sort of, you know, we can develop ourselves as this relaxation brand. You know, it's like, you know, I like to say it's like, you know, people don't talk about Red Bull as like a caffeine or B12 drink
Yeah.
or company. It's
Right.
like, they're not a caffeine company. They're an energy
Right.
drink. It's like it's the
Right.
feeling. It's like the
Right.
actual emotion
Right.
that comes out of it, and that's how we built the brand. And that's like, you know, how you can easily fill these like these use cases and these need states throughout the day. So yeah, to your
Mhm.
point about D2C, and this obviously, you know, it's like saying like COVID helps stuff, because COVID is like the
I,
worst.
I know. I know.
But
I know.
it helped D2C, and it actually probably helped us too, because, you know, people were seeking out these alternatives, and wellness and how to examine your life took a boost.
But
But
it did. You know, it did. I think you hit the nail on the head just a little bit to correct you there. It helped everyone to self-re-examine their lives, right? And how you can, whether it's a consumption, whether it's a health, whether it's different, it helped you consume. So there's nothing shameful of saying that. Certain businesses grew at that, certain other areas did, but ultimately it was about that individual feeling better and reconnecting to themselves there. So there's nothing bad about that. And if you guys were helping mentally in that state, that's a good thing.
yeah, totally. And we, you know, so everyone I think saw that, was like tapping into this, saw trial go up. And the great thing is, like, we offer subscription as part of our D2C strategy, and our subscriptions now are like around 50% of our entire ecom business. That means like, this is like, we're building habits, and this relaxation category is a real thing. I mean, you can see that obviously just too in the category. There's a lot of players in it now, like big players like Pepsi and Coke and
Yep.
other people, which is a great thing, because it's an important thing.
Did you, as you ended the year, I guess, you know, this is a question I've asked. You know, I've worked with brand editors. I've done a panel or two in the past, like 4 or 5 months over last year and this year. So I guess basic question everyone's asked, right? What was the biggest thing you learned about last year? And what's the new strategy you implemented moving forward that you know is not going to change? It's kind of like that, you know, it's the new norm, right?
Yeah. I think like, you know, it's interesting. Like, we always took, like, we were always like a content led brand, a social, like social first and D2C. So like, if anything, last year just like reaffirmed that, like, okay, this is a good model. Like, we need to go, you know, deeper into this. Like, it's funny, like, we've never even formally dabbled with influencers, or, you know, even other platforms like TikTok, and we're going to start to do that. So it just was a good reaffirming year of like, okay, we're on the right track. You know, which, you know, can be tough, because it is sometimes hard to explain to distribution partners and retail partners that, like, no, these like silly little social posts we do really help, and they're good.
Right.
You know, these
Right.
targeted ads help. What it's changed is, like, you know, I'm sure, like, sampling, like field work, like at the end of the day, it's like getting the can in people's hands, and like getting
Yeah.
people to try this product, and getting liquid to lips and all that, those other fun terms. Like, it's important. So it's like, how do we be a bit more mobile about that? How do we like be a bit more guerrilla, you know, so that way there's a bit of a safety net of like, you know, you can't go back into the stores, or you can't do actual events. Like, what can you do? And whether that's pop-ups or outdoors, or, so that's been the big shift. I think that's like a shift for, you know, any industry. It's like, how can you, you know, be a bit more agile on the
Yeah.
ground in person? Because it's still important to make that human contact and get people to try products.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to change, and that's not going to change, right? It's still, do you think that the CBD, in an age now where more and more states are allowing it, you know, I think there's separation of what's CBD versus marijuana, you know, is there still confusion? in the marketplace? Do you still, I mean, I know you and I've talked many times that you definitely do not push the product as that. So I guess first, let me talk about, explain to me, like to the audience, as how you did yesterday, is, how is that CBD message put forth? Because it's not the first focal point for you guys. It's actually kind of the after point, I kind of feel.
Yeah, and that's out of like design, but also necessity. You know, by design, like I said, because like we just want to position ourselves as like we're a relaxation drink, like, and because there's more than CBD in it as well, like like hemp, and we say hemp too, not even CBD consciously, but like hemp's like the hero functional
Yep.
ingredient, but then there's adaptogens as well. These adaptogens are becoming much more well known, like L-theanine and everyone knows ginseng and lemon.
Saying right.
So it's like a blend.
We talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Go
a
on, I'm sorry.
blend of all this that leads to like the feeling. So,
Yep.
but and then to like, in terms of like, especially on DTC and social, like you are, I mean, I came from the media world, you are beholden to the platform partners, and what the platform partners will let you say and won't say really affects how you
Yeah.
finagle your marketing funnel, like using, like different.
Very clear. They'll
Yeah.
pull you down real fast. I mean, we talk about, obviously, with gamers and stuff, they'll pull you down, or sometimes it passes, sometimes it don't. It's a tricky angle.
Yeah.
But it's becoming more acceptable. I mean, so understanding the parameters that the platforms put on it, right? Which is one barrier. Socially, it's becoming more acceptable, particularly to the 18, the millennial generation, right? You're not having to convince your core demographic about any
No.
of that as much anymore, correct?
No, definitely not. And I think actually there's a new education, which is a strategy this year, is actually like we're going to try to balance a bit of like this calm, cool, collected relaxation communications with some actual education, like find a recess way to
Yep.
like educate people, make science fun. I heard that
Yep.
in the last chat as well.
Yeah.
And part of that is with some innovations we have coming out. We will be innovating and coming out with more products this year that are underneath this calm, cool, collected umbrella and the relaxation brand umbrella. But CBD in particular, I think because the market is so crowded now with like,
Mm-hmm.
it is important now, I think, to make a difference, because there's things on the market that are hemp seed oil, which is totally different than like something that actually has CBD in it. There's a
Mm-hmm.
difference between just the CBD extract and full spectrum hemp, which gives you this entourage effect of balancing
Yep.
your body and your endocannabinoid system. I became a full scientist since I left.
I can tell you did. We didn't go as deep about this yesterday. It's good though. I mean, obviously our audience, this is what they want to hear, so this is good.
Yeah. So there does need to be a bit of an education, and like I mentioned yesterday too, it's like we don't actually market too much to the cannabis world because there's a different, there's variables obviously, but there's a different need state, and like we'll hear from like a lot of people that are like, THC, like,
Right.
like flower, like, oils, and like they're like, the comments online is like, this didn't fuck me up. It's like, well, that's not
Right.
the point, so.
That's the point. Right.
But some other products have much higher milligrams of CBD, and you'll feel that a
Yeah.
lot more. And some will make you, depending on the milligrams in your body, will make you sleepy, and some will make you actually just feel more balanced and kind of focused. So that sort of education is not just needed for us, but I think it's just a service for like the entire industry and all consumers too. It's
Yeah. I
it's the
mean,
difference between like,
well, it's a challenge, right? Look, because you have
caffeine.
you've got a lot of different messages that you've got to convey somehow in your sale, right? It's not like, it's a typical energy drink or a caffeinated drink. You've got different legal parameters, different confined socially how you can communicate the message versus what the audience already knows right now about it. So I mean, it's a lot of things to take into when you're building out a strategy. So I always commend anyone in the space, whether it's cannabis or particularly CBD oils and so forth, and beverages, because it's not as overt as the cannabis conversation, right? So it's and I think a lot of people still tend to mix the two together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you're looking at like, it's so funny because it's really just an ingredient. It's just like there's a social construct around it because there's a lot of hype and buzz, and you have Congress people saying the words up in like Capitol Hill, but like,
Right.
if you're looking at like the future, which I believe is the future, and like you go into any C-store, like a 7-Eleven or gas station, there will be a relaxation fridge by
Okay.
the fridge, and you already see it in like some like like Air Ones and other like
Yeah.
markets like that. But it's like whether you're a seltzer with L-theanine in it, whether you're a CBD drink, whether you're a magnesium-based drink like Driftwell, these are all the same. These are all like routes to the same feeling,
Yeah.
and it's just like
And do you feel like the consumer, starting even with your guys' beverages, aligned to certain flavors and certain, you know, feelings from those flavors, even though are you promoting different flavors as a different feeling, calmness? I mean, how does that play into some of the messaging, or is it more right now you choose what's ever going to be best for you? Like, talk a little bit. And we did not talk about this much yesterday, but I
yeah.
ordered some, and then I was now I'm curious.
Thanks. I appreciate you ordering some. Well, I wonder what you ordered actually, because like the sampler pack is by far the most popular first
I
purchase.
think my husband ordered it. I think that's what he ordered, actually. I just yelled out, order anything. So I'm sure that's what he chose.
Yeah, and then people pick their path from there. And it's the flavor is really just like I think I'm biased. I think all the flavors are really great. Like it's definitely a secondary communication on our end, but we brew and I say brew actually because it's like almost like a tea process. Like we brew
Mhm.
with real dried fruit. Like these are all real fruits that we work with. It's no like additives or anything. So the flavors are all really really great, and that's almost more of just a personal preference. But then we do a bit fun work on like the content side where the flavors all have their own personalities. So if you're into that, like that could lean you into like picking one or the other, where like peach ginger is a bit like of a funny kind of high maintenance character that's like really posh and
Yeah.
bougie. And black cherry is a little darker and moody. um, but it seems just like personal preference. The ones that seem to move are blood orange and peach ginger. I think like coconut lime is a bit more seasonal.
Okay.
And there's different like uses. Like coconut lime definitely seems popular as a cocktail mixer, especially during the warm months, and it
Yeah.
depends on how you're using it. Yeah. And we actually just, and like again with the storytelling background is like we just launched a limited edition flavor called Strawberry Rose. um, but with my storytelling hat, I was like, we were going to launch it around Valentine's Day. It's going to be like dozen roses, you buy a dozen.
Of course.
So you kind of like, the way I look at flavor, it's like there's obviously people that are just purely interested in a type of flavor because they've had it in other
Mhm.
forms of liquids
Yep.
or foods, and
Right.
then
Peach tea, peach, whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
there should be some sort of a story behind it, because then some people are
Mhm.
like, well, strawberry rose, I wasn't thinking about it, but this will be funny to buy for my partner or myself, or
Yeah.
because yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you, I mean, given the sampler personalities, flavors, and we even talked, I think, yesterday a little bit about influencer stuff. Have you guys thought about aligning with a personality, athlete, celebrity? In a world now where more and more people are relying on, and again, I use the word influencer to be any of those things, right? They can be a celebrity, an athlete, a DJ. It could be your more lifestyle. Have you guys thought about, others, and a lot of these brands to jumpstart what they've done, obviously, is align with someone so big to do that? Have you guys thought about that as a positioning to do, or are you restricted because of, again, some of the parameters?
uh Not so much restrictive with influencers for CBD, or I just do a good job of like ignoring not knowing the restrictions conveniently
Yeah, yeah.
uh until like one of our lawyers tells me about them. But I think more on the influencer side, we're looking at on the CBD side, and I say on the CBD side because we're in the middle. We're going to launch a product very soon that'll be a tad different. CBD, since there needs to be a little bit less education, it's more of like a cultural play. Like what people need to feel calm, cool, collected, need to focus, need to like be their self during the day to like be more creative, be more productive.
Yeah.
Like what people are going to grab this as like a replacement for their 2 p.m. coffee, so they're not like totally jacked up, but they had
Gotcha.
coffee, they got the day started. Now they need to kind of even out. So it could be anyone from you know illustrators to general creatives to artists to surfers. You know,
Yeah.
and then obviously you got to do some editorial work, making sure people are on brand, making sure, and I mean, we could talk about influencers for a whole hour, making sure they have a genuine affinity for the product and they
Right.
enjoy it.
Right.
And you know, And then on this, we're working through an influencer program right now, more focused on this innovation and this new product, which is going to be a lot more geared towards education and credentials and explaining ingredients a bit more, but in a non-brand way. So, you know, finding that Venn diagram of like
Yep.
cultural but trusted voice in the wellness space.
Right. And the content allows you to do that when you're aligning with the right creator, right? Content allows you to do that, particularly again during COVID, more from their home in a place where they feel more comfortable. You know, I found so many brands surprised, leaned in more to influencers, but just in their home and adapted to some of what they would normally do to their home life, which was interesting.
Yeah.
We have tons of questions, which is awesome. And I failed to be checking them. And I think we still have a good like 10, 15 minutes of the session, maybe only 10, I can't recall. So if someone from Brand Innovators would let us know over chat, that would be great. But let me start, there's a good 5 or 6 here. So let me start asking some of these to you. Great question. We talked a little bit about this. What brands do you look up to? And other leaders in kind of the marketplace here do you admire?
You know, I mean, I mentioned like Anheuser-Busch. I'm a little biased, but I do think they're incredibly good marketers. I think, especially when you think about how big they are, like how quickly they seem to be able to move is pretty impressive. You know, and like you can see like you know, they're releasing a tequila based sparkling you know, a seltzer with Travis Scott. Like that's like a big deal. And like the way Natty continues to move and adjust, you know, they made like a big art installation out of diplomas, and it was technically the most expensive piece of art ever constructed because all those diplomas are worth like God knows how much money.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't see
Yeah,
that. I'll have to
like,
look that. It's funny.
yeah, funny stuff. Those are like, I think they're some of the best marketers. You know, like personally, like as you can like maybe guess from like my age or how I look, like I'm partial to like the Vans of the world, and I think a lot of the VF Corp brands do a good job. North Face does a good job. You know, this thing Vans just launched Channel 66 is really fun and nice and interesting.
So you tend to be driven by those brands that bring lifestyle and like that whole kind of right North Face Vans, right? They're very much about like so knowing their customer to bringing the lifestyle of kind of them into that whole mix there.
Yeah, and then you know, for Recess and brands I look up to, I look at the brands that had to like carve out their own category. Like I look at like, you know, Oatly, like oat milk, that category, just like, you know, I think I read a headline somewhere that was like, I'm gonna get the year wrong, like the 20-year overnight success. It's like, yeah, they were living out of space for a long, long time. And Chobani, I think, is a great brand, and like how they are able to talk about so many different products in a really unique and interesting way and explain the benefits of them is really good. Like their communications are very on point and
strong, very strong.
Yeah,
you know, it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, okay, and then I kind of actually like it's funny. I kind of always told myself I never wanted to work for like a craft beer brand or wine brand, but like I do look at a lot of like how they talk about ingredients now, because we do have a bit of a complex proposition if you really wanted to do a full ingredient story. So I have a newfound admiration for how some of the craft brands tell their ingredient story and what, you know, how they get detailed about it as well.
I have a new fondness for wine a lot from the pandemic, but I think a lot of people do. You know, listen to all these brands. I think during this time, you guys self-included, right? It's about ultimately figuring out as new technologies emerge and platforms emerge. You know, TikTok, obviously, Clubhouse, all these, right? As you're starting to build this strategy, right? How do you look at where you can spend time, or how do you on these technologies platforms, and or are some easier for you to work with than others, given obviously the demographics you focus on and the ingredients? It's a challenge, right, for all, not just from obviously you guys have different challenges, but any client keeping up with these audiences changing the platforms. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's like it was mentioned in the last chat too. I mentioned it's a cliche because it is, but it's like it's an audience first like thing. It's like knowing and like what's the goal? Like really, Facebook for us now is just like purely to drive sales. Like there's no cultural benefit or audience benefit for like producing just Facebook content. Us right now, unless someone from Facebook can show me some cool new deck.
Definitely.
And I'm saying Facebook as the platform, obviously Instagram is totally different and part of Facebook.
Of
Instagram
course.
is super relevant for us just because of the age and the type of content.
Yep.
So it starts with that. And then real tactically just focus. I believe it's like better to go deep on like X amount of platforms than just try to spread yourself thin and just be everywhere because you feel like you have to be everywhere because you don't need to be.
Yep.
But yeah, we're in a fun, like Clubhouse is something we're looking at. We're gonna sponsor a show very soon, a funny popular one. I don't know what I'm allowed. It's we're gonna sponsor the NYU Girls Roasting Tech Guys house soon.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's a great way. That's a smart way in. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background. Yeah.
I just forced everyone to like sign that deal.
I think you may. You have a sales rep over there really happy right now.
Well, that's interesting. Clubhouse, it's like the Wild West, and that's what's helpful. And some of the platforms are new; they're more open to experimentation and getting things done. And then TikTok is something we're going to go into. Obviously, it's just like a no-brainer. Like you have to. The way it just drives your brand and drives sales is like uncomparable. Like if you really strike a moment, like the movement you can make there is crazy. And TikTok's interesting too. I'm always curious like to see how brands approach it because like one thing I've noticed, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, is like it's kind of the first platform where you really can't be that precious about your brand, how your product's being used. Like if the apple juice company where the kids are just biting the plastic because they think it sounds like an apple being bitten, it's like no one internally would have ever pitched that as an idea, or even like the Chick-fil-A pizza. It's like it's like people at brands would be like, you're making us look terrible. But it's like, no, you're like selling like now millions of units because people want to like bite the plastic or like do this thing. And it's really interesting to see how everyone kind of takes a step back and like lets the consumer take control of like how they want to position the brands on there. And it's very similar. It's almost like it's a weird comparison. It's like there was that lawsuit with like PlayStation where people were modding their PlayStations and making them better and taking them apart, just like you would if you bought a car. You're legally allowed to do that to buy a car. It's almost like similar where it's like, you put the word out on TikTok and it's like you got to let these kids do whatever the hell they want with your product. It's like that's not the intended use. Like sorry, they're in control. That's going to be interesting for us and for everyone to start going down that road, which I like. I kind of think it's fun.
Listen, I mean, it's again the consumer journeys. It's shifted, right? Like it's the behaviors have shifted. It all goes back to kind of the topic of what we've been talking about is what their expectations are, whether it's the technology, whether they align, how they align with the brand. A purposeful brand is bigger now than ever, right? The days we used to think about just Ben and Jerry's or some of those iconic brands that were purposeful brands. If you don't have a purpose now, even as the biggest brand, and really stick to that, this younger demographic is not aligning or thinking or having the same passion for the brand. So you've got to think about that in a lot of stuff. It's how do you see your audience expanding for you guys, right? Because obviously we've talked about your probably core audience here about 21 to 34 or someone I'm speculating, right? But how do you get that larger audience? And is it education? Is it acceptance? Right? Are there programs you're going to do to try to get that 49 and over? So I guess there's twofold there, right? Expanding it. And then I think another question in the Q&A was the education and acceptance process. So maybe actually talk about the two to intertwine because I think it obviously impacts particularly from a demographic growth perspective.
Totally. Yeah. I think for us right now, it's important to go deeper with millennials and then age down. Like I think introducing recess to a younger generation and then going deeper with millennials is important. And because you kind of want to stick with people as they grow up. And it's a much like easier, there's way less barriers to like stick with the people you've been with and like grow up with them than like try to convince like, maybe not Gen X, but a little bit older that like this is something they should grab now after they have a lifetime of habits and just like preconceptions. So for me, it's like, I find it more interesting to be like, how do we talk about parenting, knowing that actually millennials, like they're probably one of the biggest parenting groups now, like new parents, like
Mhm.
you can be a very useful tool as a new parent for yourself,
It could be.
and just relaxing in general and staying focused and being calm. It's a big part of parenting. So I hear. I'm not a
Yeah.
kid. But and then yeah, going younger, and that's like being on new platforms, playing into trends that are already happening with younger generations, like people being like more sober curious or not wanting
Mhm.
to like engage with like drugs and alcohol as much.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think just like to be practical, it's like, if older generations want to tap in and try it, great, but it's not going to be a huge focus just because it's like, we're a small company too. We don't have like
Right.
millions in media to go like, start doing like cable TV ads so we can
Yep.
hit like
Yep.
the
Yep.
45 to 55-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah. What we've talked so much about social influencers and stuff, and we actually haven't talked much about like your distribution partners and the marketing that you do with them, right? And that's and I feel terrible. It's like probably the biggest piece of the puzzle for you right now, and the importance there. So let's shift a little there because I know we only have like probably around 5 or 6 minutes left, and see if there's any other questions. Please send them through, and I will make sure that we share. But talk a little bit about that. That intersection of, yeah, you're still your consumer focus, but okay, where's that? How do you bring that journey of the consumer focus all the way into the retail, right? So they're thinking about it at a retail or whatever partner that you're working with.
Yeah, totally. And I guess I'll like answer this last question too quickly. Like the acceptance and education, it's like
Yep.
it's kind of an industry-wide must have. Like it's not just us that need to do that. And we're very active in Washington and with regulatory, both like with our distribution partners and like with the government. And because there's not just consumer education, but there is also like the customer education, like, and it's just a lot of it is like the acceptance is there, but for like on the customer side, and this is a good segue into like field and distributors and actually being on the shelves, is like a lot of people like of the world, like that are national chains and retailers, they're like, we know it's fine, but we're not going to do it till it's
Right. Right.
national
Until it's
regulated.
accepted. It's right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
which makes sense. It's like what
Right.
but yeah, it's like, yeah, we're not like, yeah. So to segue, we're more than a D2C company. We have a lot of really great distribution partners across the country, making big moves into California and the Pacific Northwest this year. And I'm in Austin right now, obviously, so we're
Yeah.
here looking to expand. And it's interesting because it's almost like we've noticed that at least during COVID, it's like one hand washes the other. It's
Mhm.
like a lot of our paid social and D2C efforts also help, on the ground, because it's not like that person that's holding their phone and getting an Instagram ad is just clicking through, but they're also seeing it on the shelves. And, it's just like another point of reference for this logo and this brand. And I like to say too, like, I think, our retail is like the best, like, it's almost like, because we sell individual cans at retail, but you can
Yeah.
buy packs online. So if you're trying this in the store and you realize you like it and you don't want to keep going back to buy one can, the next step you'll take is actually moving over to D2C and buying on e-com. So it's almost like our best out of home are these shelf spaces and our retail partners. And I look at them as marketing tools just as much as sales partners.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
guys have any problems with COVID shipping, getting product use? Obviously we saw all tons of partners had a lot of those issues, and even the biggest partners had those issues,
Yeah.
right? So did that, we didn't talk about this yesterday. Were you guys impacted much by that?
I mean, we're impacted with the general, like, I mean, people also forget there was like, a lot of other like weather and election and all sorts of stuff that happened. But we had the same effects as any brand when they're shipping stuff, just like with like slower shipping than usual,
Yeah.
working through that communication strategy of like, politely apologizing, maybe offering some discounts, and also just explaining the general macro issue here. It's not just you or us. But the weather last week was really fun and interesting across the United States. So we had some, frozen issues, but what can you do about it?
Nothing.
Um,
Nothing. There's
and then
many other people having many more problems.
yeah, and but yeah, and we did a unique thing as a company. A lot of companies did it too, but like we're with the launch that's coming up. in the next month or so. We built an entirely new product line, really remote during a pandemic. So like remote taste testing, remote ingredients, and then obviously with choose like shipping, ingredients across countries and all that. It's been a lot of learnings. And
is this the product that you can't talk about that we talked about a little bit yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay. For all of those watching, just keep an eye out for their site and their social channels. They'll have some great information to share. Andrew couldn't necessarily share today. Sorry.
But yeah, that's been it mainly. It's like, same old story for everyone that deals with physical products, and is doing it kind of on their own. If you have partners like Amazon or anyone else, it's helpful. But yeah, what can you do? This is the world we live in. Yeah.
Right. And I think, again, it goes back to, and I think we probably still have to wrap it up here, but it goes back to like this year, right? The new norm, right? And what is like, it's not going back, so I guess what 20 in this year, what's most exciting? Is there something major for the brand that you guys are looking towards for this year? Is it just the continued growth that you've had? Is there, what's the big point, I think, for you guys as a brand for this year?
I think like I'm excited about expanding like our storytelling, like building on the great foundation before I got here, and just like continue to go deeper with our Instagram content, build out new platforms, I keep saying this, but I want to bring Recess a bit more into the real world. Like, anyone's familiar with us, it's a lot of animation, kind of fun stuff like Fantasyland, and I want to start showing the product and humans and kind of like show the real space, because it's like important and it resonates, but balancing that with the animation style. And that's based off some like insights too, like the consumer, like we see like UGC, like a big thing is people like to pour it into glassware, which is interesting.
It is very interesting.
Yeah, like confirming that it is sort of like it's an occasion, like you're gonna take time to sip this and enjoy it, and the liquid does look nice in it, and it's the can's beautiful too, but it's like let's show the liquid, let's like show people the bubbles and the color, and real one-on-one stuff. But I'm really excited to do that, and this new product is really exciting. Yeah, everyone keep an eye out. It'll be like a moment for us and a moment for the category, and just all the stuff we could do there. It won't have the same regulations, so it'll be a bit, we can go a bit not bigger, but a little more routes to market, and it'll be fun. And then going deeper locally, like I think everyone missed just like being with people, and I want to be out on the streets and do events.
You want them to experience those events back. Yeah, I'm sure that is. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I've heard, from everyone, gaming world, wherever, right, is being back out. I would assume that that will experiential, in market will have a huge burst by end year. But I also think it will change, right, where people do it, how many people you have in those events, right, like. The customer journey in those events, what makes it more special, right? Just handing out a can isn't as much as it used to be anymore, right? Because given that all the experiences that people create, whether it's drive-through ones now or have you, it puts more pressure on you guys. I see Pearl coming on screen ready to kick us off. So before we get the cane pulled.